Coming up in today's newscast, Israel goes on the record about its military operations in Syria. Ultra-Orthodox legislators rebut a court order to stop discriminating against women. And finally, we have a statistic to prove it. Israelis are among the happiest populations on Earth.
A fresh round of airstrikes have just been reported across various provinces in northern Syria. Witnesses say they saw Israeli aircraft at the scene of the bombings, which at this time have left approximately 3 people dead. And as usual with army policy, Israel has neither confirmed nor denied any involvement. But having said that, this alleged attack took place just a few hours after Israel did confirm that it had carried out some 200 bombings in Syria over the last 2 years.
רק כרגע פורסם בשם מקורות צבאיים, לכן גם אני יכול לצטט שישראל פעלה בשנתיים האחרונות למעלה מ-200 פעם באופן צבאי בסוריה עצמה. תבינו את משמעות הדבר הזה מבחינת שמירת הקו האדום, מניעת אותם דברים שאיראן עשתה, עושה ומנסה לעשות מול ישראל מסוריה בעצמה.
This admission comes from Israel's own intelligence minister, Israel Katz, addressing a crowd at IDC Herzliya's Conference for International Counterterrorism. The statement is a rare confirmation of what most have widely assumed, that the army has conducted regular and all-encompassing strikes throughout Syria in order to protect its own interests. This latest alleged airstrike in Syria took place in the early morning hours in the northwest Syrian town of Wadi al-Uyun. Now, notably, it doesn't appear as though any specific military compounds were the target here. Having said that, this region has been linked to a purported missile factory and is also believed to be the location of at least one significant Syrian scientific research center. Syria media reported that anti-air defense batteries scrambled just in time to block a lot of the alleged airstrikes, but at the same time, many missiles do seem to have reached their targets. Video and photo evidence has quickly surfaced on social media, showing the effects of the blasts. A mix of Syrian and Iranian nationals are said to have been injured in these alleged airstrikes.
The United Kingdom's central opposition party, the Labour Party, is facing some extreme blowback following continued allegations of anti-Semitism. And indeed, the party's past is littered with scandals, especially with regards to party head Jeremy Corbyn. Well, in an effort to put those scandals behind them, the party publicly accepted the internationally recognized definition of anti-Semitism, and their addition of a caveat to this definition, however, has only served to reignite the scandal all over again.
Most nations and political factions have adopted the definition of anti-Semitism set forth by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance as a global standard. Among the fine print of this definition are texts that defend Israel's right to exist, forbid the comparison of modern Israeli policies to that of the Nazis, and not holding Jews collectively responsible for actions that the Israeli government takes. While the Labour Party's adoption of the IHRA's definition is certainly a long time coming, this is where the caveat kicks in. The Labour Party has said that in addition to adopting the definition, the party adds an addendum, which, quote, ensures that this will not in any way undermine freedom of expression on Israel or the rights of Palestinians, end quote.
Well, it was critical today that we reassured the Jewish community and were in complete solidarity with the concerns that they'd raised over the last few months. So that's why, as an NEC, we agreed to adopt not just the IRA definition, which was adopted in 2016, but also all of the examples in full. We also sought to reassure our own members that, freedom of speech was not going to be limited. The spirit of IRA and its definitions was never intended to limit that free speech, and we made that clarification today at the meeting to state quite clearly that the intention of IRA isn't to limit discourse on the political situation between Israel and Palestine.
This somewhat vague condition has divided UK Jews, who've long felt hostility or at least passive acceptance of anti-Semitism rampant throughout the kingdom. Labour Friends of Israel director Jennifer Gerber sums up how many British Jews feel by saying, quote, it's appalling that the Labour Party has once again ignored the view clearly and repeatedly stated by the Jewish community, that it should adopt the full IHRA definition without additions, omissions, or caveats, end quote. Now, at the top of all these scandals is arguably the UK's Labour Party leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Corbyn has long been accused of harboring an openly anti-Semitic agenda and letting it take over his party. Labour members have resigned following the resurfacing of video footage in which Corbyn can be seen questioning Israel's right to exist, comparing Israel's conduct to that of the Nazis, and calling Hamas terrorists his brothers. And that's after the recent leaking of photos of Corbyn at terrorist memorials. So if anything, this is all evidence that something is certainly afoul in the United Kingdom.
The Israeli High Court of Justice rejected a petition today to cancel an eviction order against the Bedouin West Bank village of Khan al-Ahmar. Further, the village was ruled to be demolished as soon as next week. Now, Israeli authorities argue that the residents built in Khan al-Ahmar were built illegally and without permits, and too close to the highway, and that they failed to come to an agreement with the government regarding relocation despite 9 years of fighting with the state. Well, the issue is still being flung to the forefront of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict following more settlement expansion, the nation-state law, and other actions taken by Israeli leadership that at best are seen as counterproductive to peace. Joining me now with more is the director of the International Division at Regavim, Naomi Khan. Naomi, thank you for being here with us. All right, so my first question to you is, what's your initial reaction to this eviction notice and the demolition order?
Well, the eviction notice is not new. The eviction notices were actually issued 9 years ago when the first petition was submitted by Regavim and residents of the community of Kfar Adumim. We're clearly in favor. We were one of the petitioners in that original petition, and we've been following the process ever since. The question here is it's a complex matter. The original petition and the pursuant petitions are not anti-Bedouin, they're not anti-Arab. They are, in terms of, they are pro-law and order. They are pro making some sort of sense out of what's happening on the ground, and they are an attempt to stop a very clear, calculated program initiated by the Palestinian Authority and funded by the European Union to create facts on the ground and essentially illegally take over land in Area C.
Well, okay, but this group of 120-something families who are living in Khan al-Ahmar, they were moved there originally. That was not their choice to be moved there. They were moved there in the 1950s.
Not exactly. In the 1950s, an inter-tribal blood feud broke out down in the Negev in the Arad region, where the Jahalin Bedouin, the rest of the clan, still resides. The weaker parts of the family were pushed out, and they migrated northwards to the Judean desert area that they're presently in. Like Bedouin all over the world, they were nomadic or semi-nomadic, and the first actual permanent structure that was created in this area was not created by the Bedouin. It was built by an Italian NGO, Vento de Terra. It was the school at Khan al-Ahmar. The Bedouin were in fact put there, but they were put there by the Palestinian Authority and the Europeans who are funding this kind of activity in order to actually take control of this very, very strategic point. So it wasn't the Israelis who put them there, it was the Palestinians. Now, this is a very weak, very underprivileged, very vulnerable community, and they're being used very, very cynically by forces much larger than themselves.
Well, but then this kind of opens up some other questions, because you're saying, okay, they were put there by the Palestinian Authority, and they also are claiming that actually they had permission from the Palestinians who owned that property to be there. In addition,
that claim was only raised for the first time in the last round of Supreme Court hearings. It had never been raised before. They have never made any claim that they were anything but, that the construction was anything but illegal, and they had never claimed that they had any ownership of any kind of this land. This is very, very new claims, and the Supreme Court, in its decision today, actually more or less threw these claims out and said, 9 years and 4 rounds and now 5 rounds of Supreme Court hearings. No one's ever brought up this issue. This is clearly another stalling tactic.
So. All right, well, I want to thank you, first of all, for coming in and sharing more details with us on that. Unfortunately, obviously, this is not the end of the story. And it's a much, much larger conversation. A lot more needs to be discussed. Thank you so much, Naomi, for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, now earlier this year, Israel's High Court ruled that ultra-Orthodox Knesset parties could no longer continue their practice of blocking women from running for office. Well, now, leaders from those parties have finally agreed to strike those illegal and discriminatory clauses from their formal regulations. But in an outright challenge to the court's decision, as well as against arguments from women, the leaders say that they personally will continue to bar women as they see fit.
The Agudat Party, which makes up one link of the United Torah Judaism Party with seats in the Knesset, has long been accused of systemic sexism and gender discrimination. In accordance with the party's strict religious teachings, women are prohibited from holding positions of power. This includes even affording them the option of running for public office. The outrage from women both in and out of this party reached a fever pitch when Israel's High Court finally demanded the party reform and be equal to all genders. The party has complied with the written order by removing this clause from its official regulation, but leaders from Agudat have made it no secret that the move is purely symbolic, and that their full intent is to use their power and influence to continue blocking women from advancing in the party. The party's official statement reads, quote, "As the position of the Council of Torah sages has not changed, and any candidate for membership in the party must vow to follow the decisions of the Council of Torah sages, the change in the regulations will not bring about any actual change in acceptance to the party," end quote. Lawyers have long argued that Israeli law, even with its Jewish roots, has zero basis to block women from advancing in either politics or public service roles. But to date, no ultra-Orthodox parties have ever seemingly held positions for women at a high government level. For now, it's unclear if this symbolic gesture will actually appease the High Court, or whether they will indeed legally force ultra-Orthodox parties to diversify. But due to the Knesset's party seat priority system, a party could feasibly escape such a move by allowing women to run for office, and then placing them too low on the list to actually have a chance of advancing, even if elected.
Israel's defense minister Avigdor Lieberman is under fire today for releasing a controversial Rosh Hashanah video on his Twitter. The clip shows Lieberman participating in an almost beat-for-beat replay of a episode from Sacha Baron Cohen's hit, Who is America? But Lieberman's version of the video is being denounced by women's rights groups for allegedly encouraging sexual harassment and making a joke of it. So here's the beginning of the clip in question. For fans of Who is America, you'll probably notice a striking similarity to the Eran Morad character as brought to life in Sacha Baron Cohen's recent Showtime series.
שקט צעיר! My name, מתן גביש, Colonel Chief Captain, Krav Maga Academy, New York. Today we learn how to fight terrorists. What are you waiting for? Yalla, let's go! Today, we are with Israel Minister of Defense, Mr. Avigdor Lieberman. Mr. Lieberman, I will show you some technique and suggestions on how to fight terrorists.
אתה יודע, אני כל יום שומע כל כך הרבה שטויות, אז נשמע גם אותך.
The video goes on to almost replicate word-for-word highlights from Cohen's satirical take on Israeli military men gone wrong. The clip shows Matan Gavish walking Israel's defense minister through arming babies with guns, a mishap with new Israeli technology, and alerting the public to terror. It's all familiar territory explored by Cohen in Who is America, right down to the over-exaggerated accent. But it's when the presumably fake Gavish teaches Lieberman how to take selfies underneath the burqa of Muslim women that women's rights activists become particularly alarmed. Now, notably, Cohen did the exact same stunt on episode 2 of his show. In that context, however, the act was meant to expose Republican Representative Jason Spencer for his allegedly anti-Muslim views. The fact that Spencer fell for that gag and went along with it are among the reasons for Georgia politician for his resignation from the government mere days after the episode aired. In the context of Lieberman's video, however, the satirical touch here seems blurry at best. Some say it's merely a failed attempt at humor, but others, including experts from rape crisis centers all over the country, say it's far worse. For them, this context, timing, and placement on an Israeli leader's Twitter is an endorsement of sexual humiliation. At the very least, they say it's grossly insensitive to the plight of women, especially when framed as a New Year's greeting to the entire country. Many have demanded that the video be immediately taken down. At this time, however, the clip remains on Lieberman's Twitter for all to see. If you thought the drama over next year's Eurovision song competition was over, think again. European broadcasters have now asked the Israeli government to sign a memorandum of understanding, one which promises that the Israeli leaders will not politicize the festivities nor interfere with Eurovision at all for its own agenda. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been asked to sign the letter himself, but at this time he appears to be hesitating, a sign that Eurovision is not yet a done deal.
While Eurovision officials have reportedly begun the official hunt to decide which Israeli city will host next year's big event, this hiccup could be a major one. Broadcasters have asked Netanyahu to commit on paper to allowing Eurovision to proceed with zero government interference. The biggest point asks Netanyahu to agree to host any contestant regardless of their political beliefs. For some Israeli leaders, however, this is one demand too far. Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan has urged Netanyahu not to agree to this, on the grounds that contestants shouldn't be able to enter Israel if they dissent with the country's politics or wish it harm. Israel's tourism minister, Yariv Levin, has similarly complained that Eurovision is holding Israel to a different standard than the rest of the world. Having said that, Eurovision organizers have added such demands when it comes to countries that don't always promote freedom or movement of expression, most recently the Ukraine and Azerbaijan. Israel has, of course, hosted Eurovision in the past with relatively little hubbub, but this year the situation is considerably different. These plans are coming together at a time when Israel's international reputation has fallen under a dark cloud. Some have noted the irony that while Netanyahu hesitates to allow critics of Israel into the country for Eurovision, he spent the last 3 days entertaining controversial Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, a leader accused of grotesque war crimes and who happily compared himself to Adolf Hitler. For some, Israeli leaders have painted themselves into a corner. Major policy wins, such as the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, seem to have come at the cost of global condemnation for failing to actively seek peace with the Palestinians. And whether true or untrue, this has reflected on the international stage in many ways. Mere days ago, pop star Lana Del Rey publicly reversed her decision to perform in Israel after failing to secure an opportunity to also perform in the Palestinian territories. Then today, indie band Of Montreal echoed that choice by bowing out of their concert as well, just mere days ahead of its scheduled opening. Of Montreal has played in Israel in the past, but according to them, the times have changed considerably. Their statement reads, quote, "We have so much love for the peace-loving Israeli people and an equal amount of love for the peace-loving Palestinians. However, now is not the time for escapism and celebrations. Now is the time for activism and protests," end quote. Whether Eurovision will follow a similar fate remains unclear.
The environment within which our youths are growing has changed dramatically in the last few decades. There's the internet, social media, smartphones, and the ever-increasing need for instant gratification. Education, on the other hand, has been sorely lacking in keeping up with these changes. Youth movement Who Dares Wins is looking to bridge that gap, and they're doing it in an incredible way. Here to tell us all about it are the founders of Who Dares Wins, Asaf Gazit and Itamar Faraj. Thank you both very much for coming in.
Thank you
very much. All right, so let's just start us off with what is Who Dares Wins? How does it work? What do you do? Take it away.
So first of all, like you said, environment changed dramatically. And we believe that the education the kid needs is to be a better person, to teach them values and tools for life, not only math, not only literature, but how to be a better person, how to be a better son or a father or a worker or a boss. So the way we do it in Who Dares Wins is we do education through sports and fitness trainings. Okay. So it's not only fitness training like you know in the gym or CrossFit. We invented a new method we call Lions Fit. That basically what it means, Lions Fit, it's that behind every exercise you do, there's an opportunity to learn something, some value, some educational thing you can teach others and to be a better person in life, to experience first of all the value and then to pass it on.
Are these solutions, I guess you could say, the solutions to the problems in the sports and the games that you've kind of created in the Lions games, are they like creative solutions, or is there like there is a right answer or there is a wrong answer? It's more like, no, think creatively and come up with your own answer.
There's never a wrong answer, and there's a lot of right answers. Okay, so there's a lot of methods you can go through in life, and as well as in sports or everything you do. So this is what we teach the kids. It's their own responsibility.
So Itamar, how did you guys come up with this? How did you go about creating Who Dares First?
He's the brain after all this organization. We are friends from the army. We meet together in a course of officer. It's called Bad Echad. Okay. And we met on the podium after a race running. He was the first in the race. I was the tattoo and become friends. After the army, we want to make something to the children that we get in the army. In 1.5 year course, we make a very good improve because become from child to adult person. Yes.
So we're working on maturation, on maturing kind of children. We're working on critical thinking skills, and obviously they're getting exercise and getting out in the open and things like that, which are all amazing. So what's the response been like from people who have come and participated?
Not only from the kids, but as well as from the parents. It's amazing the influence it has on children. It's like more than we expected. Improving grades, at least 20 points in average. Improvement in social skills and improvement of decreasing of fatigue, not fatigue, I'm sorry, obesity.
Sure. Okay.
And healthy lifestyle is increasing. So these are only a few of the.
And the children have a lot of fun all the
Yeah.
time. They want to
That's
come all the
important.
time, 3, 4, 5 times in the week. They come to 3 times in a year. They come to sleep in the
field.
In the field, 3 days.
That's so much fun. So, okay, who is this for? What age groups? Is it just for Israelis? What's the plan? What comes next?
It's for 13 until 18, and we want to make it before 13. And
So you want to extend to the younger groups too?
To the younger group.
And then, how often do you run a program? Is it like a set course that it starts here and it ends on this day, or can anybody come at any day?
It's 2 times a week.
2 times a week.
Two gatherings per week. And it's you can go
through the whole year.
Through the whole year, 12 months, and you can join in the middle of the year. But you need adaptations, physically and emotionally. You need adaptations. But you can join teams that are running a year or so. And for your question, we want to expand abroad for USA or Europe and so on. It's a new educational method that we want to, show the world.
Well, they need it. Coming from the States, I know that they keep cutting. They cut anything outside of the core classes. They're cutting gym, things like that. So this is a great addition, and I wish you guys the best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So we have possibly the biggest case of mistaken identity ever on our hands. An Israeli citizen recently got a new cell phone, which came with a new cell phone number, but he started getting text messages from strangers, confirming suspicions that maybe this was an old number that originally belonged to someone else. Well, as the messages continued, it turns out that he was right, but the old number didn't belong to just anyone. He actually received the old phone number of the current IDF's chief of staff, Gadi Eisenkot.
As you can imagine, the citizen, identified so far to the public only as an Israeli businessman named Yossi, didn't know what to make of the weird text messages at first. But as they continued, a few red flags went up. It soon became clear that he was receiving highly classified government and military intelligence to his phone, with the sender mistakenly thinking that they were texting the head of the IDF, Gadi Eisenkot himself. How an average Joe managed to receive the personal number of possibly one of the most significant members of Israel's inner circle remains unclear. Phone companies, as per policy, typically ensure that numbers are cleaned and changed, so as to make sure that this never happens. And furthermore, this was likely a classified military number to begin with, well outside the channels for civilian use. But the cell phone provider says the number was not classified and was indeed reassigned to another number. Let's just hope that Yossi, whoever he is, knows how to keep a secret.
Nobody ever said life in Israel was always simple or easy, but according to the Central Bureau of Statistics, at least it's almost always happy. A new study has suggested that nearly 90% of all Israelis living in the country say that they're satisfied with their lives, and that's certainly worth smiling about.
With the Hebrew calendar coming to a close and the Rosh Hashanah New Year holiday on the horizon, people are taking a look back at the past year. Well, according to this study, the feedback is almost universally positive. Adding a little icing to the cake is that the report also suggests nearly half of Israelis exercise on a regular basis. As we know, exercise and a healthy lifestyle definitely impacts your overall health and happiness. Now, having said that though, over a third of Israelis polled do say that they're unhappy with their finances, with a whopping 31% saying that they struggle regularly to pay their bills. Indeed, Israeli cities, Tel Aviv in particular, have often been ranked among the most expensive cities to live in the world. But clearly people aren't letting money stresses impact their outlook on life. But the real proof may be in the pudding. The average lifespan for an Israeli man last year was 84.6 years, with women at 80.7 years. Those are considerably high numbers compared to the rest of the world. Now, life may be better measured in quality versus quantity, but happier people definitely tend to live a bit longer on average anyway. So, always look for the bright side of life and don't stop smiling.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. This is what you say if you start getting calls that are clearly not meant for you, like one Israeli has been since getting a new number. The word is ta'ut, meaning mistake. Now, a ta'ut or mistake isn't always a bad thing. In fact, it's only through making ta'uyot or mistakes that we can learn and grow. Maybe it's a ta'ut in business or in a homework assignment, or maybe it's just the ta'ut of procrastinating too long. Whatever the case, if you make a ta'ut, don't get discouraged. It happens. Just blame the dog or something. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear and warm with a low of 77 or 25 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow is expected to be partly cloudy with a drop in temperatures to a high of 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.62 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.